My name is Mona Reno, and I am working here today for the Nevada Women's History Project. Today is Saturday, May the 6th, 2017, and we are outside of Baker, Nevada at the Border Inn to interview Denise Koyle, who is the owner-operator of this facility. And to get a picture of where we are, you film people should think about the movie, The Baghdad Cafe. And Denise told me that was her training film. So this is Highway 50 East in Nevada, at the very end. It's a U.S. highway and goes all across America, but we are interviewing women who live in Nevada on Highway 50 for the John Ben Snow Memorial Trust. Denise, today we're here interviewing you in one of the motel rooms at the Border Inn. And so can you tell us about how you got here, your early life, and we'll move forward to get to the Border Inn?
Okay, I was born in Spanish Fork, Utah, January 7th, 1948. My father went to Korea in 1950 and was killed in November 1950. So I was a war orphan, am a war orphan. My mother moved back to Eureka, Utah, where she was from, so I grew up in a little mining town that kind of probably gives me a good affinity for the rural Nevada. She remarried, and in 1960 we moved to Delta, Utah, and that's where I went to high school. And in 1966 I went to the University of Utah and I graduated with a history degree from the U, and the first job out of the university was at the university library. Well, my husband completed his master's degree.
So that's where you met. Your husband is at the, and what was his name?
Alexander Perea. He was from Pagosa Springs, Colorado.
And he's the father of your two children?
Yes. And my boys are Gary and Dennis. And they're both in politics, and we'll talk about that later. We moved to Phoenix for a summer, from March through September, perfect time to be in Phoenix. Then we moved back to Salt Lake. And then we moved to Southern California, lived in Huntington Beach. And at some point, this property at the time was 3 acres with an old shack on it. And my parents and mother and stepfather had bought it, but my mother would not stay out here after the first 2 summers. She had a newborn the first summer, and she was pregnant the second summer. There was no electricity. They were working off diesel generators. The wind was blowing, and she just said, I'm not going to go out there anymore. So it was leased for years and years. And Alex wanted to run his own business. He knew about this place, thought it had potential, and wanted to move back out here. Remembering my mother's angst about it all, I wasn't really crazy about the idea, but at that point the marriage was getting shaky, and I thought, well, maybe that'll help. So we were here for a year and a half, 2 years. I'm doing all the work. He didn't know the first thing about running the place. I didn't know anything about running the place either, but I was the one that got up and kept it going. And I got tired and I left. And a week later he picked up and left, and so I came back because somebody had to pay the bills. And I've been here 40 years.
Now in the store recently, I just took a picture of your property in 1979, and you were telling me about the buildings there. Would you tell us?
Okay, so there was the original shack, it was a shack, with an 8-stool bar, tiles on the floor that none of the tiles matched. No, the bathroom was outside and around the corner, but it was, plumbing. It was plumbed, it wasn't an outhouse, but it was in Utah, so they would drink in Nevada and go to bathroom in Utah, which still is the way it is. We run all the sewer that way. So there was a good-sized log cabin that had been moved down here from Lehman Caves. It was the original visitor center at the caves, and the person that was renting it from my parents moved it down and had used it as his home. We tore it apart and remodeled it and used it as the business, and it was really quite cozy. It was about a 40 by 30 building. It was pretty good size. And
did the logs show on the inside, the same ones on the outside, so there was a tradition?
It was a true, yeah. it sagged in the middle, and you know, the wind. The first winter we lived in it, I put up blankets on the bedroom to keep the cold out, and the wind would blow and the blankets would flap, you know, that kind of stuff.
So you're here with your 2 young children by yourself?
At that point, Alex was still here. He helped remodel that and did that. He left in probably late '79. And then I was here alone, young, with 2 young kids. And my son Gary, that is now my business partner, he's been here working as long as I have. People don't give him enough credit for being here. He was pumping gas and trying to keep the Christmas tree from falling over, stuff like that. That was his job when he was in school. And he came home from college weekends if I had emergencies to help keep the business going.
Now you told me that brick building burnt down, that it was arson and you lost that.
Yeah, log building, yeah.
And then tell us about rebuilding and expanding.
So Alex left in '79, and I was running the business, and I had 86 to customer, and within a week, the place burned down. It started on an outside wall. It was arson. There's no way to prove it. I hadn't enough money to have insurance at that point, so I did go to a bankruptcy lawyer, but I didn't ever end up having to file bankruptcy. But that was an interesting lesson. But then it gets more complicated from there. So I have 8 motel rooms and 2 old gas pumps, and I actually sold the ashes to some people who had come into Ely to buy the Hotel Nevada. They made payments for 3 or 4 years, in that time period, I married Dean Baker and became a ranch wife. And then in '85, I repossessed the building business because they had stopped making payments, and then we rebuilt. And being a ranch wife and running this kind of business doesn't work, and it was a huge mistake, and it's over and done with. So, but then I'm back here running the business, and we rebuilt in the fall of '85. We started plans to rebuild and opened the building that's the existing main building now in '86. And my kids are in high school at that point, and in Nevada, when your kids want to play football and wrestling, you travel. So that was what we did. And one of the things about living out here, where we do so much driving, the best time with your kids is when you're in the car. This was before cell phones and TV screens. That's a terrible thing to happen. But we had good quality time, actually, even though they were boarding out in Ely. And so anyway, we got it up and running, and we're doing well. The national park was created in '86, '87 when we added the motel rooms here. So the park was created in 1986, and their immediate need was more housing. So we went on a little trip and found these units in Rifle, Colorado. They'd never been used, so they were like new, and we moved them out here about half price and set them up, and used half of them for seasonal housing for the Park Service, which got us off to a good footing and paid for those really quickly. And then we've gone back and forth about trying to build a new motel. It just won't work out here. Our season's too short. Mortgage payments would be too big. We'd go broke. So we just kind of make do with what we are. So when somebody calls, okay, we're very basic. We try to be clean and comfortable, and we have fun, and that usually fits. So. And
then you added on in the restaurant.
Okay, so the main building, we worked in that. Gary moved back, got married, has kids, and things were going great. And then we wanted to build a new motel. We worked the figures. We could not make it work. And so we decided we would expand the building, and hopefully that'd make enough business to justify more. We got that all planned and signed the loan papers in 2008, about 2 months before the economy crashed. And then you deal with regulators. So we're remodeling. State Fire Marshal tells us we need to put sprinklers in the place, which it more than doubled the price of the project. But anyway, we went ahead, we did it, and the economy crashed. And in the long term, it was a good thing. There's always something good about things. It was really tough, 2009, 2010. The only 2 years we ever lost money. I was putting my retirement back into the business. But Gary was here with me. And my mother, God bless her, grew up during the Depression, and you never go anywhere in my mother's house where there's not food stashed everywhere, under the bed, in the closets. And I grew up with that, and I laid in bed wondering what would ever happen if we had another crash, because I'm a historian and pretty sure that it was going to happen. And it did. But Gary had to watch. At this point, he's taking more and more responsibility, and we're taking every step we can to cut costs, and we got through it. But now he's tighter than I am. I mean, there was a point in that time period when I said, Gary, we need a new vacuum. He goes, not yet. I mean, we were watching it pretty closely. So in the long run, it was good that he was here, saw the need for keeping that stash of money in the bank, because you're going to need it at some point. And he's much more careful. And with the internet and everything like that, it makes it easier to purchase. Can do a lot of comparison shopping. So he does most of the purchasing and all of the book work and that. And I'm the out front person.
So tell us what you have at this point. You say there's several businesses in this conglomerate. Tell us what those are.
Okay, so the business is located in Utah and Nevada, White Pine and Millard counties. The motel and service station are in Utah. The restaurant, bar, casino, RV park are in Nevada. So they're little businesses, none of which are self-sufficient. You have to have, when you're located in the very middle of nowhere, which is not an exaggeration. Other people claim it, but we are. You have to have a little bit of everything to make the whole thing work. That's the business.
So it's quite a big change from when you got here in the 70s to what you have now.
Yeah, we were running it with Alex and I and one employee. I have about 22 employees right now.
Yeah. And how did that change you as a person, that process? You grew with the property. Okay.
So I never worked in a service industry other than the library. Never waited tables. I was the oldest of 7 kids, so I didn't know how to cook. I used to be a lot more organized than I am now. The logistics of it, I could balance it all. So we have 22 employees, but back at the beginning, I know how to organize things and pull off a job. And that's an inherent thing. It's nothing you really learn. But people ask, how do you live out here? You have to get up every morning, which sounds pretty simple, but you have to get up every morning and do the job, whether you want to or not. In the 40 years I've been out here, there was one day I could not get out of bed, but only one day, which I tell people some days getting out of bed is the hardest thing I do. But I've been amazingly healthy. I'm still pretty healthy. Eyes and teeth and stuff are given away, but I can still work a 16-hour shift if I need to. And I used to work 16-hour shifts every day of the week if I needed to. I can't do that anymore. I can work it, and then I have to have a day to recoup. But that physical stamina and the outlook that you have a job to do and you got to get it done. I asked my younger son, who has never been involved in the business because he didn't want to have anything to do with cleaning toilets or doing dishes. And we never knew where he was going to land, but he's done very well. He's assistant director of Dieter right now. And what he I said, when he started moving up fast after college, I said, "You must be competent, Dennis." He says, "No, Mom, I'm no more competent than the average person, but I never leave the office until the job's done." I think it's a really important lesson that kids need to realize. You don't walk out at 6 o'clock if that's when the shift's over, if you still got work to do. So that's one lesson. And then just getting out of bed and putting one foot forward all day long until everything clicks.
You must like people. You must interact with a lot of variety of people. So how does that work out for you? It's you're alone, but you're not alone.
Yeah, I see too many people. So my life is not like a rancher's wife that lives 20 miles off the highway. I see people and I just need a place to go away from people. I never lived alone until I was 40. And I didn't realize I like living alone. The house looks just the same when I walk back in as when I left it. And I can do what I want to do.
You actually live in Baker.
No, I live here. I live on the property.
Oh, you do? I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's not the ideal situation. It would be better if I did live off the property because I'm too close. If they need me, they can get me. But on the other hand, it helps manage the business. It helps with things like knowing if something's walking away, and I'm here all the time, so I notice that things are, walking away or going out the back door, which is not a huge thing. It's not a big thing, but it's something you have to watch as a business owner.
Mm-hmm. And you wouldn't have changed any of that? You'd just do the same thing if you had a choice?
If I had, like 20 years ago, somebody had come in to purchase it, I would have sold in a minute. I would have gone back to school, become a history professor, and teach the rest of my life. That never happened. It's 20 years later. I'm 20 years older. I probably, if somebody comes along with the money now and we're actively seeking a buyer, I will sell. I have my bucket list. I have my 3-month tour of Europe planned. Wouldn't probably go back to school at this point, but I would move to a community with a campus where you have an option of how to spend your time. Out here, when people say, what do people do out here? My standard answer is, well, they either work too much or they drink too much. And there are no options. You can't go to, you go to a play, you drive 140 miles. You go to a movie, 140 miles. It doesn't work.
Tell us about your love of history. Which history? Local Nevada history?
Well, mostly
history?
U.S. But anything. But anyway, I just like it.
But you've researched it.
Mm-hmm. And that's what I do in my spare time. I don't drink. I'm not a teetotaler, but I don't have a drink maybe 2-3 times a month. I read. And the thing with the economic development we haven't got to, but one of the economic development things I did was in the wintertime, my only customers on a Saturday night were probably sheep herders. And there might be 15, 20, 25 sheep herders. And they started going away. The industry was dying. It's at sort of plateaued right now. It's not going downhill. Might even be climbing back a little bit. But those were my customers, and they were the ones that got me through the winter. So I'd been thinking about an idea for a couple of years, and I've told this story on tape before, but I started an old sheepherders party. It was going to be a one-time thing, and it was just a free meal, come and have a sheepherders appreciation. And by the end of the night, one of the guys that had come grabbed a notebook and got a mailing list, and it's turned into a 2-day party, and I have about 150 people in the middle of January who are mostly over 70 show up here because it means so much to them. And we do oral histories, and we have the hallway with all the pictures on it. And so for me, the University of Utah Library contacted me and said, we want everything you have. I did not contact them. The fact that I went to the U, worked at the library, and they came to me maybe validated me some. So that was good.
Is that a public event? Other people can come and...
Friday night, no.
It's for them to talk.
Yeah, Friday night is the appreciation dinner at the free dinner. This year we had a blizzard the day before, and I'm going, oh my gosh, nobody's going to come. 145 people. They'd be bigger if we had more beds and places to put them. People in town are really good about letting me use the closed down motels. They'll reopen them for the weekend, and there's a dormitory up at home for them, and we use that.
So it's very different than the Elk Coast Cowboy Poetry event, because that's for the public and it's more on stage and things. Yours is an intimate discussion between the sheepherders themselves.
Yeah, so Friday night after dinner, it's an open mic program. And Hank Vogler, who, if you read Range Magazine, is an opinionated rancher in the typical mold, but funnier and more entertaining than most. And he's our MC. And we get people up, and they'll sing songs, or they'll yodel, or they'll do a poem, or they'll just tell a funny story or a sad story, and we do tape all of that.
Yeah.
And then Saturday is actually open to the public, and we have the sourdough pancake breakfast and something in the morning. Don't know what we'll do this year, but then in the afternoon we have a concert, sourdough slim, or people who sing the old West album cowboy songs. And then I do a full sit-down bass dinner, and then we have a sheepherder ball. And that was one thing I didn't know about when we started the party. There was a tradition that when the sheep came off the mountains in the fall, and the sheepherders got to reunite with their families, before they got outfitted and headed out for the desert, they would have a sheepherders ball. And we've revived that tradition of having, it's in January, not October, but we have a sheepherders ball, and the guy that plays the music will not play anything newer than Merle Haggard. So, and it's mellow and it's good, and it's not, we use the word party, but it is really just, I tell people, it's not like cowboy poetry, because I cook a lot of food and people come and we sit and talk for 2 days.
Right. So you're not really interested in it becoming a tourist event. It's really a personal, it's for the sheepherder.
It is. And I do turn away people that want to come and watch the sheepherders. And it's not, no, we don't have enough beds.
Right. Well, isn't that interesting? Yeah, because I know that you have been quite involved in economic development within the county. You've held various positions. Can you tell us about some of that? So,
going back to the party, that is a way to meld an interest with what I do as a business person, which wasn't premeditated, but it happened, and it's wonderful. So I sent out, the first party was word of mouth, and I had no idea how many people would show up, so I thought, maybe 50, 60. And when I asked one of the sheep owners, I said, if I have a party for sheep herders, will they come? He goes, if you have a party for sheep herders, I'll donate a lamb. So he donated the lamb, and traditionally somebody steps up and says, I'll donate a lamb next year. It's now a 3-lamb party, but it's still a free lamb. And so I knew what I wanted to cook. I just wanted to do lamb stew and spuds, in Dutch oven type spuds, ham and beans, applesauce cake, something that they would have been eating in camp. And that's what it was. But that first year, 90 showed up. I didn't run out of food. The next year, 150 showed up. This was when it was just one night. And then I guess it was about the 4th year we went to the 2 nights. We start peeling potatoes and cooking a week ahead of time. And part of the reason for the January and doing this was to have something to do in January. What it's ultimately done between New Year's Eve and 2 nights I have 3 nights with full occupancy in January. I break even or make a little bit of money in January now, which traditionally January, February, March just kill you. But anyway, So we start peeling potatoes. I make the soup, we make the stew, and most of the herders that come are from Utah, and most of them are Scandinavian. There were a few Basque families in Utah, but not many. And but Basques from White Pine County come. There's Paris's and Uvaldes and those guys. They come over too. But Basque dinner is just fun. It's family style. You sit down at a big table and you bring out bowls of food and everybody just serves themselves. And so last year I did 12 leg of lambs, a 30-pound roast beef, and 20 pounds of a Basque chicken recipe. And then, so you have the tongue appetizer to start out with, which isn't a huge hit, but those guys that like it just make fun of everybody else. And the cabbage soup and the salad, the meat and potatoes, and then a raspberry sorbet for dessert. And it takes about 2 hours. And the most gratifying thing about that, I do charge for it, but not as much as you would pay in Elko or Winnemucca. But they'll sit and talk. You get this communal thing going, and it's that big room is full, the party room is full, and people, and the wine on the table, that helps. Because they can pour as much wine as they want, and they keep going, and then they just sit for an hour or so and just visit and have a good time. It is so I'm not relaxed because I'm trying to push the food out, but it is a really relaxing, good feeling when I look out there and everybody's just happy.
And you've been doing that how many years now?
The Basque dinner for probably 11. Mm-hmm. And I do it in between times. If somebody wants me to do it, I'll do it for a group if there's at least 25 or 30 in the group, because it's too much work for just...
Are the nationalities of the sheepherders different in Utah? You mentioned the nationalities in Nevada. Are they different in Utah?
Well, most of the sheep herders in Utah come from central Utah, San Pete, Sevier, a little bit of Utah County, a little bit of Beaver County, and their mountain ranges are in Utah, and that's almost all private property now. But they were Mormon converts. They mostly came from Sweden and Denmark. And so when the people, my mailing list, there's Andersons, Nielsen's, Johnsons, Stephensons. One year we had 3 Jimmy Jacobsons at the party. So it's mostly Scandinavian, and it's because that's where the converts came. They came to central Utah. They had pretty lush mountain range, and I'm not sure exactly how they were figured out, but they were, since the 1870s, basically, there's been people that would trail from Utah out to the West Desert of Utah, which is Tooele, Millard, Iron, Juab counties. And that we're winter range because we don't usually have snow on the ground.
And they all get along?
Yes. They're like it. The thing about cowboys and sheep herders is real. They did hate each other. But out here with the deer, the Gonders, I've got some oral histories. But we took 2 different times where one of the sheep guys was talking about one of the ranch guys, and they both were so mutually respectful of each other because they had been such good neighbors to each other. That probably wasn't the norm, but it did happen.
And these oral histories, are you going to send them to
They're out there.
Utah? You already?
We've done about 55 that were in the process. I just read the first batch of transcripts.
That's wonderful. What's it called? Does it have a collection name?
We're calling it the David Tilford collection because he's the interviewer. He's a realtor from Ely that his father was a miner in Osceola, and he loves history. Okay. And this second year when I had the party, I said, Dave, I'm having a party and I want you to come and bring your video camera. So that's when we started videotaping, and then the next year we started doing the black and white photos and that. So most of the sheep herders come from Utah, the central counties in Utah, San Pete, Juab, Utah, Sevier counties. And they're mostly were Mormon converts they would buy their little herds and start building herds, and they were their own herders. The owners were the herders. And they did live in the tents, and they did live in the tent-covered wagons, and like everybody else. But they were very successful, and like World War I, was a turning point for them because there was so much demand for wool, they became immensely wealthy. The owners were, and then they started hiring herders, who they hired at first were other white guys, but then more and more they didn't want to come out. And you don't have no family life if you're gone 6 months out of the year. And then they hired Navajos, because Navajos do herd sheep, and I did know Navajo herders when I first came here, but there aren't any of those anymore. Then they went to Mexico and Mexican herders, and for maybe 15, 20 years, we're mostly Mexican. When I'm saying the Mexicans kept me in business, or the sheep herders kept me in business, it was mostly Mexican. And then they started not coming. They'd come and then they would find other job opportunities, made more money. Now it's mostly Peruvians and some Colombians. There's been a similar change in shearing. So we just got through a shearing season. I used to have 3 or 4 shearing crews come in during shearing season. And some nights I'd have them all at once and it'd be a huge party. There's only 2 shearing companies left in the western United States that I know of. And originally they had white guys shearing, and then they had Mexican shearing, and then they went to New Zealand and Australia. And that's still the case. This crew had some New Zealanders, no Australians, but they had a South African, a 22-year-old, and they came over. But now they're having trouble. We're going to have more and more trouble with immigration issues. But 2 years ago they couldn't get an Australian in, but now they're going to Uruguay, and there's Uruguayans that come in to shear. So it's kind of a complex business, but it is a business and a history and like I say, I thought nobody knows anything about it, and it's really interesting, I think.
Yeah, and is it different in the Nevada side?
No, same type of thing. So the shearers, one shearing crew comes out of Idaho and he comes down and does they go to California and do California first, and they move to Nevada, Utah, Idaho, Montana. Then they jump across the pond and go to England and Scotland and Ireland and shear there. It's a year-round job for shearers.
So you did not say the word Basque, and Nevada is sort of known for its Basque shearers. Do you have an idea of why the Basque are not here?
Well, so I've been here 40 years. The only time I know that there was a Basque sheep herder in this valley was the first year I was here. So there were some before I came, but he was only here that year, and then there were no more Basque. Paris's and Uvaldes and a few families in Eureka County still have sheep. But towards the end of the 70s and 80s, the price for lamb and wool dropped out, and most of the sheep outfits went into cattle. Like Pete Gogashi, I don't know that he has a sheep. I don't know if he has a sheep on his ranch or not. Probably not. That would be an example. It's economics. The one thing I learned that I didn't know before was that there was a sheep shearing union. In the 1940s, it was the largest union in the United States. It is still in existence. Their headquarters are in Butte, Montana. And all these shearers and the owners of the shearing crews belong to that union. So they deal with the federal government, and it's one of those NH4 or something programs where they match the jobs up with who needs them. So I did ask the guy from South Africa how somebody from northern South Africa makes their way to Baker, Nevada. And he put his name in and got matched up with his crew, and it all seems to work. So the reason that the industry recruits overseas, Australian, New Zealand, Uruguay, Colombian shearers is because there is nobody in this country with the skills or the desire to learn the skills, because it's extremely tough work. Even with electric shearers, they use a strap underneath their belly while they're bending over all day to save their backs and run the sheep through like that. And they love to have an audience. I send tourists out if they want to know what there is to do. I said, why don't you go watch the sheepherders or shearers? And they really like to put on a show because they're young and they're cocky and they're really fun. So creating the business, running the business, I think is my major accomplishment. But another really important thing that happened, and I spend a lot of time and effort on it, was in the creation of Great Basin National Heritage Area, which we did not know about until the superintendent of the park went to a meeting in Washington, D.C. and heard about it. It was started on the East Coast, and National Heritage Areas get national funding to do interpretation, preservation, marketing, economic development. Becky Mills, the superintendent, brought it back as an economic development idea because so the park was created, but there was not much of a jump in park visitation from when it was a monument.
And you're talking about the Great Basin
National Park, yes. And the woman that was running the concession up there at the time was my very closest friend, Tonya Harvey, who was an anthropologist, and her master's was on women in communes. So anyway, she ran the concession, and I ran this, and we started having meetings to see if it was a feasible thing. And we are the only heritage area in the Pacific Northwest region. Utah has another one, and then the rest of them are east of here. It took 6 years of meetings and driving around the West and going to Washington, D.C. and to get the legislation passed. And Harry Reid and his staff wrote the legislation. And I did go to Washington and testify before a Senate subcommittee on national heritage areas. And I wouldn't want to be before those guys if I'd ever done anything wrong, because it's really nerve-wracking. But anyway, it happened, and Tonya was the president, I was the secretary. We were you can't be really humble when two people created a piece of national legislation. So we did. And Tonya was president, and she got Alzheimer's, was getting Alzheimer's, and she retired, and I'm the president. Was the president till 2 years ago. Now I'm just the vice president. Basically, I've spent 16, 17 years doing heritage area things, and Trump's budget eliminated us. I like NPS and NPR. I mean, all those groups that don't do anything important, that got zero in the budget. But what we've done has been significant. In Delta, Utah, on Main Street, there is a brand new Topaz Museum about the Japanese internment camp that was just about 70 miles out that way. We put $150,000 into that. We've put $150,000 into the Nevada Northern Railroad, the Renaissance Village in Ely, little groups around. If some group has a site that doesn't have bathroom facilities, we're happy to buy them a porta potty, because that's the most important thing in tourism. So it's been an economic thing, and it's a way. We started it as a marketing thing, but it is the kind of thing that was really fun, and it got a lot more fun after we got the management plan done and just started spending money helping people.
How did you determine the boundaries?
First of all, heritage areas, national heritage areas designated by Congress, have to be grassroots driven. It has to come from the bottom up. So we have to get organized. We started out using the counties along Highway 50 from Millard County, Utah, White Pine, Eureka, and Lander, because there are people in both of those areas who are concerned about being involved with any kind of government, even though we would assure them that this is a locally run nonprofit which receives federal funding that is funneled through the Park Service. That kept the park involved in it. So it's Great Basin National Park is part of the heritage area, but is not the governing body of the heritage area. That's local boards. So we had some very contentious meetings, and Eureka and Lander County opted out. They, for better use of a word, the black helicopter people did. Which in reality was a blessing, because we no longer had to drive an extra 140, 150 miles to the next meeting. So it's just White Pine County, Nevada, and Miller County, Utah, and pretty well represents the transportation issues, the mining issues, the ranching, and the tourism. Utah, of course, has the Mormon history, which we don't emphasize much because there is a Mormon pioneer heritage area in Utah. So we can't concentrate more on the other facets of the Great Basin and how do people live out here.
And how do you know you're in it? I didn't see any signs on the highway or anything yet. I mean, and I was just sort of wondering, I've seen the map of it, of the heritage area, and it's, you know, it is quite large.
Yeah, it's, we just went to our heritage area is the size of Massachusetts with a population of 20,000 people. And we're going to host the October meeting of the National Heritage Areas. And we were in Yuma a couple of weeks ago explaining to them that you have to do this and you have to do this to get to us. But once you get to us, we will really have a good time. And we will mostly be showing them White Pine County because of the railroad and the really active volunteer community that tries to keep Ely afloat.
So it's interpretive areas and comfort facilities and mostly...
And research. We funded some red fox studies. It's pretty broad, as long as it fits into Great Basin.
So you get a patch of money from the federal government.
And we have to match it.
Oh, okay.
We have to match it one to one.
And that's a government agent, a county has to match it?
We can match it with, as long as it's not other federal agencies, you know, counties, cities, private foundations. NCOT was a huge, NCOT for the first 6 years was our major funder and kept us going.
Can you tell us who that is?
The Nevada Commission on Tourism, which is now called Travel Nevada. Right after we got designation, we went to Pete Gogashia and
he's your state.
And Dean Rhodes was the counterpart in Elko County. And we did get $100,000 from the state legislature to set up an office and to establish a structure. And we have the little Forest Service Ranger Station in Baker, the white building with green trim, really cute. That's our office, and that's donated by the park to us. We don't have to pay rent for that, but we can't count it as match. But and we have 1 3/4 employees. We have a full-time executive director and a grants administrator and a bookkeeper.
So people apply to you. You get the money, and then you allocate it to other places who are in your objectives.
And we have, you know, standards and all that's on our website.
Yeah.
GreatBasinHeritage.org.
GreatBasinHeritage.org. All right.
Okay, so that was fun, and it's an ongoing interest. And going back to Sheepherder, like the 3rd or 4th year I went to the Heritage Area Board meeting and said, you guys need to come in as a sponsor. You guys are helping me with the volunteer stuff anyway, waiting, you know, cooking and cleaning and that. So that also worked. I mean, it's economic development. It all works together. Yeah, we've meshed it together pretty well. I have to have something outside of here to get me out of here. So I enjoy it, and I have volunteered on a lot of local boards. The most significant ones being the Tourism Board and the Chamber of Commerce, which tie right into the business. The Rotary Club of Ely, Nevada. I was the first woman member. Not the first one asked, but the first one who would join. And that was an experience. And why did I do it? Because you have to show them. And some of those guys didn't want a woman in their club. And I have to tell you, one of the guys, well, like the way it's set, there would be a table where I just knew I wasn't going to sit because they would rush over there and fill it up. But one of the guys this last year was quite ill, and we'd got to be pretty good friends off, and I started sitting with him at lunch, and we were talking about the history of Rotary, and I said something about being the, you know, getting in there, and this guy looked at me and says, "Well, you know, I didn't vote for you," and I said, "Well, I know." But you know, the difference between the generations, we go in and we just kind of just wear them down, whereas these other, you know, the younger generation just comes in and they get it done. We had to be a little more subtle. Okay, so there's that, and the most fun board that I think I was ever on was the state board of the ACLU. And I was on it for 8 or 10 years, but then I got busier here and wasn't making the meetings, and so I resigned from that. But
Tell us again what the acronym stands for.
oh, American Civil Liberties Union, who in one day this year made more money in contributions than they do in a year. Immigration. Anyway, it would be an interesting time to be involved on those boards in any state. Utah would be really fun too. But anyway, and then I was on the school board for 8 years, and I got unelected. Probably wasn't the best fit. It wasn't probably not. It wasn't an experience that really meshed, because you don't make a lot of decisions, and you have to take full responsibility for the budget, even if the state isn't giving you enough money to budget with. And so I shouldn't have run the third term. I wasn't comfortable anyway, and I went back and forth on it. But if you go into a board meeting and everybody in the room knows that you're the one that said, "Let's cut athletics," you're probably not going to get elected. So I went down in flames. But once you cut art, music, libraries, what do you cut? And I didn't really want to cut them. I just wanted people to show up at the meetings. And they did.
Yeah. Okay, and through all this, you must have some sort of underlying philosophy. Like, what drove you to all those different aspects?
Well, there's a lot of the business tie in it, and education, the kids. I can't run my business without teenagers. I really encourage them to save their money and go to college. Sometimes I'm successful, sometimes I'm not. But the education, the cultural, you know, that. And I'm only 69, so I haven't figured this one out yet. I haven't figured out totally what drives me. So I sit there one day going, why are you doing this? I do believe you help people if they need help. I think education and learning should be fun. I think you have to get out of bed every day and put one foot in front of the other, and that's about it. What am I most proud of? And we haven't talked about it in the interview, but my 2 sons, who are both productive and involved in the community and do good for the broader society. One's a county commissioner and one is deputy director of Dieter. The business, I built a business in a location that I don't think anybody else would have done what I've done with it. It might be a big flashier place, but I built something that people depend on and rely on and look forward to. And the heritage area was a major accomplishment. But I had a circle of friends who could support me, who understood me, and that I could go to for help, and somehow pretty good life, actually. So I've been here 40 years, and people ask me how it's been, and I say I've met hundreds and hundreds of people I would never have met anywhere else in the world. If I'd lived in a city, we would have been driving past each other and never connecting. That's the best thing about being here, plus the fact that we have built a going, productive, functioning business, which is hard to do in Nevada, because if you drive around Nevada, there are all sorts of places boarded up, blowing away in the wind. And we haven't blown away yet. How's that?
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much for participating in our program of Women on Highway 50, and we're very glad to have met you.